4 weeks ago tomorrow, Western New York changed forever when a white supremacist walked into the Tops on Jefferson Avenue in Buffalo and shot 13 people, killing 10 of them. In the time since, so many have asked how they can help those victims' families. That often meant donating money to the official fundraising effort. Well, we can now report that the 514 Survivors Fund has raised almost $3 million, and the total gets bigger each day. That money will go to the survivors of those who were killed and to those directly affected by the tragedy. We've seen this region rally behind those families with individual donations and a lot of corporations and organizations stepping up as well. The National Compassion Fund, along with Tops Markets, started this fundraising effort as a way to ensure that the money goes where it's intended. And joining us now to talk about this is the National Compassion Fund's Executive Director, Jeff Dion. Jeff, thanks so much for coming in. I know that you've traveled here to Western New York. I want to start here with just that near $3 million figure in less than a month. It's just incredible. I know that your group specializes in getting funds raised for tragedies like what we saw here in Buffalo. You think of what happened in Uvalde, Texas, shortly thereafter. Can you walk us through how this fund operates and how your organization is part of this?
Sure. Since 2014, we've administered 22 different funds for victims of mass casualty crimes. And it started when the victims of the Aurora Theater shooting came to us and said, we don't like how our fund's being administered. We want you to do a different one. And so we set up an infrastructure so that when one of these events happens, we can flip a switch, we can start accepting contributions from the general public, and we can make sure that 100% of those dollars go to the survivors of that crime. And so that's what we do. We've got the technical expertise, but it's really important to work with a local community steering committee to make the policy decisions, to make sure they're informed by community values and the community experience. Every type of this event is different, and we want to make sure it's tailored and an appropriate response.
What happened on May 14th was devastating for the entire city of Buffalo, really for the whole country when you look at what happened here, but most of all for those families who were impacted. As they're watching this and they see all of this money that's been raised, what should they know about how they'll be able to access these funds and what the timeline is like moving forward?
Sure. Well, we met with a number of family members today and explained the process to them. There are funds that are available from other sources for short-term emergency needs. People have immediate needs, and we're helping to direct them where to go. But our fund is sort of in the medium term. We give 100%, but this will probably be the largest amount of money that they get. And for us to know how much each category gets, we have to know how much money has been donated and how many people are in each category. So we hold the fund open for donations long enough to try and capture those donations. Corporations tend to give the most, but they take the longest to give. And so we're trying to strike that balance. But we've told the families that our plan is to hold the fund open for donations at least into September. And then after that, we'll do a distribution and we'll talk them through that.
So as you had these conversations today with the families, what reaction have you been able to get from them?
Relief, there's so much going on and there's so many different people that say they're raising money. So for them just to understand and sort of make sense of who's doing what, to understand our timeline and why, and for them to know that there's someone who understands what they're going through. Many of the family members I talked to said it made a real difference when they heard that I'm a homicide survivor myself and a family member of mine had been killed. And so just knowing that there's someone else who gets it gave them a level of relief that they're not alone in all of this.
And finally, Jeff, you and I were talking just a moment ago. There are a couple of these big funds that we've been talking about. There's the Survivors Fund. There's also a fund for the community. And what you're talking about, almost $3 million, that's just for the survivors. So there is even more money that's been raised out there. And you were also telling me that you have pledges that you're not including in that dollar figure. So you anticipate that this is just going to continue to grow, right?
That's correct. You know, I always say there are numerous legitimate needs arising out of an incident like this. Some people want to help victims. Some people want to build a memorial. Some people want to address long-term community needs. And that's why on the very first days when we spoke with the Community Foundation, we said it's really important that you split up the funds and let donors vote. If you want to help victims, give here, and that money comes to us. If you want to help with long-term community needs, give here, and the Community Foundation will direct that to area nonprofits. So that way we can be sure that we're consistent with donors' intent. We have more money coming in, but the needs are overwhelming. And what we can pledge is that no matter how much is raised, every single dollar is going to go to the survivors of this event.
I'm out of time, but sadly you deal with a lot of tragedy. Your reaction to just how giving Western New York has been?
It is a tremendous response. 514 was an act of hatred, and this community came together and said, we won't stand for that, and we're going to embrace these people with love and compassion, and we're going to take care of our own, and people around the country are joining them in that.
Jeff Dion is Executive Director of the National Compassion Fund, which along with TOPS established this 514 Survivors Fund to help those directly impacted by the mass shooting last month. Thanks so much for coming on to talk us through this, and safe travels to you.
Thanks for having me.